So we're joined today on Highland League Weekly by former Nairn County, Rothes and most notably probably Brora Rangers midfielder Dale Gillespie. Dale's the latest person to be telling us about his memory match. So, the obvious question to start, Dale, what's the game you've picked out from your career that stands out?
I'm going to go for probably not one that people would think, but it was a Highland League Cup game against Formartine, and the reason I've picked it is because it was a bit of a unique game. It ended 5-5, extra time, outfielder and goals, and then a penalty shootout. So that's the one I've chosen.
And it's worth saying at this point you obviously won the penalty shootout as well, because I'm guessing if you'd lost it you maybe wouldn't have picked it. But in terms of that day at North Lodge Park, what stood out about it for you, Dale? Talk us through
it. Well, obviously at the time I think we'd won the league the previous 2 seasons, and we hadn't won the Highland League Cup for Brora. So obviously that was a big target of ours. In the build-up to the game, I think the game was at least called off once due to the weather. It was at the start of March, the game. The weather all week was, again, it got called off the Saturday. It was atrocious all week. So fully expected it to be off. And another reason it's memorable for me, I was actually at a wedding the day before. Thinking the game was going to be off, so I ended up probably having a few more drinks than I should have. Gary Wood, who I was good friends with at the time, still am to be fair, he was playing for Formartine, so I was texting him, he said, no, game's definitely got to be off. Unfortunately, I probably got home about 2-3 in the morning, and then Rachel, my wife, woke me up and said, oh, the game's on, so got onto the bus, obviously, heading through to Formartine, and the weather just gradually worse and worse. I thought the game was going to be off, and then when we got there, for some reason it got called on, and yeah, so the game itself was pretty good from my point of view. We were 3-1 up at half time, so I thought maybe get another goal, start the second half and feign an injury and come off. But I think from what I remember, I think Formartine ended up going 5-3 up within about 20 minutes of the start of the second half, so yeah, not great.
Well, I was going to say, you're on about the wedding the night before. Were you a bit bleary-eyed, perhaps, on the bus down the road?
Yeah, I think it was a struggle getting. I don't think I drove to the bus, put it that way. And I probably had. It was a good long journey, so I got a couple of hours sleep. And then obviously when you're named in the starting lineup, you need to try and do as best as you can. But I think that sometimes when the weather's that bad, any performance sort of goes out the window as long as you run about and look like you're trying.
I was going to say, would that may have been one of those days where if, I think it was Richie Britton was the manager at the time, where if he'd named the team and you were on the bench, I don't suppose you'd have been too gutted, would you?
No, I would have been very happy about that one. But yeah, as I say, the game went pretty well for the first 45 minutes, and then Formartine had a very good team at the time. And as I say, I think I can't really remember the goals, but I just remember they scored literally 4 in the first 15-20 minutes of the second half. Then we got back to 5-4, and then in the last minute, I believe, can't remember who scored, but we scored the equaliser in the last minute. Joe actually came up for the corner, obviously Joe Mallon on goals, and on his way back from celebrating, I think he'd done his knee, which meant I'd used all our subs. Then John McLeod, the striker, then had to go on goals for the whole of extra time. So it was a bit of a challenge.
Well, I was going to say, you were saying you weren't sure who scored. It was, I believe, Colin Williamson that got that equaliser. But I imagine you're saying memories are maybe a bit hazy, but I imagine when you're facing extra time with all due respect to John McLeod, nae a goalkeeper wearing the gloves, I imagine there's a bit of trepidation as they're going into that.
Yeah, 100%. I think obviously we were down to 10 men as well, so as I say, I can't remember the full details, but I think we probably just camped out in our edge of our box, and we had a pretty solid defence. Midfield was solid as well, so we probably just defended for our lives. Probably looking to take it to a penalty shootout, to be honest. I can't remember if they had any chances or if we had any chances in extra time, but obviously then it went to penalties. I think John saved a penalty as well.
I did for Neil Gold, aye.
Yeah. So, and then I thankfully I took the last penalty and we won it. So it was a memorable day, and it turned out well.
Aye, that was a good bit of staying power for yourself to play 120 minutes as well.
It was a miracle, really, to be honest with you, Callum. So one of my big achievements in my career.
And I imagine saying all that as well after the game and on the way back up the road, there must have been a fair bit of sort of euphoria and celebration as well, was there?
Yeah, as to say, I think it was at the first or second round, but it was it was a huge priority for us at the time. Obviously, we'd had a lot of success in the league, so we were pretty good at partying on the bus on the way home. So I'd imagine it had been a pretty lively affair on the way home.
And I suppose in terms of the sort of on-pitch thing you were saying there, Dale, it was a big priority, and you went on to win. That was in the quarter-final, and you went on to win the cup that season for the first time in Brora's history. So, I mean, in terms of what the club's achieved, I suppose that day and that game was a sort of huge moment in Brora's history. Yeah,
for sure. I think during that 2-3 year period, we were breaking, or not breaking records, but creating new records for Brora in terms of the trophies we were winning, how we were winning the trophies. I think that the cup that year, I think we actually won 3 penalty shootouts to win it, including the final. So although we'd been playing well in the league, we were obviously scraped a couple of the games to win it. But I think in a cup, as you know, it doesn't matter how you win it. We had a really good team, so I think we probably deserved that we won that cup for the club as well.
And just the last one on that game and that run, and just in case they're watching us, I thought I'd better ask this, because you mentioned there was a few penalty shootouts in that run. Who was better at saving the penalties, John McLeod or Joe Mallon?
I think John saved the most important one.
Joe will be raging if he's watching this, but
he had enough recognition.
And in terms of your career overall, Dale, you obviously were involved at a higher level as well, but involved in football for a long time before you stopped playing at the end of last season. Was there any other games sort of stand out for you, or anything you came close to picking?
Yeah, a few sort of more personal ones. The first game I played for Scotland in their 19s, away to Iceland, that was a big one personally. Then obviously the Highland League Cup again, we won it at Nairn. I think that was the first time we'd won it in 30-40 years. That was it. And then probably the most obvious one is the Hearts Scottish Cup game. We had a few good Scottish Cup results in our time, but I think, in terms of, as I said at the start, that is my most memorable game, beating Hearts. I don't think that'll ever be beaten in terms of Highland League team, to be honest. Well, I'm kind of hoping it doesn't, but I think all the boys who played that night would agree. Obviously with the circumstances around the game during COVID, etc. as well, made it even more unique, but yeah, that's certainly probably the biggest one, certainly the biggest win I've ever had.
Well, I was going to say on that, obviously with the way it was with COVID, the build up to that game, the Highland League teams weren't playing, and training was very difficult, so in terms of preparation, it was a bit of a nightmare, I imagine, really. And would you feel, in terms of the whole sort of 140 odd years of the Scottish Cup, that's probably up there as one of, if not the biggest shock?
Yeah, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I think as you say, the circumstances around it, we hadn't played since the previous round, which was on the 8th or 9th of January when the country went back into lockdown. And then we found out 2 weeks before the Hearts game that we were going to be allowed to play in it. So I think we literally trained 3 or 4 times before the game. We were getting COVID testing at Ross County at the time. Hearts were top. I think a lot of people forget, Hearts were top of the championship at the time, absolutely flying. We hadn't played for nearly 4 months, trained 3 times, and then went out and beat them 2-1. So for me personally, it's the biggest, just due to the circumstances alone. Yeah, it was just a massive night, to be honest. And the media recognition we got at the time, UK wide, worldwide, it was such a good thing to be a part of, to be honest.
Aye, especially for not just the football club, but for somewhere like Brora, it is a village, when the places where the name Brora was being mentioned was quite remarkable, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a tiny little village in the north of Scotland, and I obviously we didn't really expect to win, to be honest. We try and keep it respectable. The chairman at the time, he certainly didn't think we were going to win, because the win bonus he offered us beforehand, he very grudgingly had to pay us. So, yeah, I don't think he'll ever be offering a win bonus like that ever again at Brora anyway.
It might be vulgar to ask what that was, but I'm imagining you were able to get something nice, were you, with that bonus?
Yeah, no, it was. We couldn't really spend it during COVID, but it was nice for after. Yeah.
Very good. And you mentioned one other game, and I was keen to ask you about that as well. Playing for Scotland under 19s, just kind of obviously representing your country. Just give us a sort of flavour of what that was like, and who else was sort of involved at that time when you were playing for them.
Yeah, at the time, I think I was 17. I was fortunate. I played, I think, 8 or 9 games in total for them. At that time, when I was around 17, I was I was a good player up here. My attitude, most importantly, was better then than it was laterally in my career. So yeah, it was a massive moment for me, and obviously the Inverness Cally Thistle at the time as well, because I think although there was a few boys that had played for the youth teams, I think I was the first one actually from Inverness that had been all the way through the ranks at the club. So that was a massive moment. The Iceland game itself there wasn't really any big names playing against them, but we played against Holland, and they had Jorginho Wijnaldum, Daley Blind, players like that playing. So yeah, looking back now, I mean, it's incredible to have played against that sort of players.
Aye. And who else was in the sort of Scotland squad that you were in at that time?
The bigger names at the time would have been Paul Hanlon, who was at Hibs, Chris Maguire, who played in the Premier League, Jamie Murphy played in the Premier League, Andrew Shinney. A few others. David Goodwillie was probably the biggest name at the time, although maybe not now, but he was a sort of the top player at the time up here.
But a lot of good names in there. Certainly a lot of guys that had good careers, and just
absolutely.
And just lastly, Dale, while we've got you, you've obviously made the decision to retire at the end of last season. Are you enjoying your retirement now, or how have you found it?
Yeah, I must admit I've not missed it at all, to be honest. I'm into my golf, so I've been playing that quite a lot. I think last season, the way our fixtures went for Brora, it wasn't the most enjoyable way to end, but we won the Highland League Cup again. And I always sort of said, as I got older, I found that I had to do more and more just to be able to keep playing at the level that I was used to playing at. And I think to keep playing, I would have had to keep doing that, and probably lost the motivation to do that. So I kept it up all the way till the end of my career, but I think as you get older, you're maybe not playing every week as I used to, and I'm not really a fan of playing one game, not playing the other, so I just wanted to keep playing every game that I could. And also I think, being honest with myself, my performances weren't nearly as good as it had been done previously, so I think it was a good time to finish. I didn't want to play for the sake of it, being honest.
No, that's perfectly understandable, but thank you very much for joining us on Highland League Weekly, Dale. Pleasure to chat to you about some of those games.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.